The screws holding the tuner side of the chassis came right out, quite loose. Not so much on the screws holding in the power supply side, which is much rustier. Two of them snapped off. And the other two, the heads are in kind of bad shape, so I can't get a really good grip on them, so I may have to drill them out or snap them off or something. As for what I'll do about that, what's left of the screws, well, let's see. Hopefully there's enough sticking out that I can use maybe some penetrating oil and then get them out. Well, I ended up snapping off those last two screws, so all four of them snapped off the power supply chassis. Hopefully that won't cause too much trouble down the line when I try to remount it in the cabinet. As for the cabinet, dirty, but I don't see any dead critters in there or anything too horrible or disgusting. So I think that cabinet will clean up pretty nice. As for the chassis, well, certainly dirty. It's kind of an odd thing. Oh, well, I wonder if that's the way it's supposed to be. There's a coil of wire. It's attached to there and then just wrapped around the shaft and soldered onto it, so maybe that's when they made the electrical connection for one side of these capacitor plates. I haven't seen anything like that. More modern tuning caps, there are several springy bits of brass that rub against the shaft, but I suppose that's another way to do it. Let's see. Stupid flashlights. Bearings must be hidden down inside here somewhere. I'm used to them being a little more exposed, and you can actually wash them out with WD-40 and then just put some new grease on it. This might be a little more complicated. And here's the really nasty chassis. Boy, that is one rusty transformer. See this little plate down here. Turn this around for you guys. Yeah, so it says it says the operating range is 105 to 125. So should be able to use this without having to worry about dropping down the line voltage, so it doesn't overheat. And many vintage radios are designed to run on like 110, and if you plug them into 125, the transformers can run pretty hot, and you're stressing out the components. Let's see. Try to tip this down. Sheet on the bottom. Could be asbestos. There's some of the screws, what's left of them. That one broke off pretty close in. That one definitely broke off pretty flush, so that'll be quite a challenge. Let's see what's on the other side. Okay, there's kind of a nut, maybe that's welded on. So, not all's lost. Maybe I can just work those nuts loose and then put on new screws when it comes time to remount this. Let's see, how about tilting this guy? So go this way. I'm going to turn this. I'm going to turn them both around so we can get a better look. Transformers aren't quite as bad on this side. I will attempt to remove all this rust, fill in the pitting, primer it, and repaint them. I guess dark flat brown would be appropriate. A bit of rust here too on this chassis. Looks like there was something living inside of that coil. Other coils aren't so bad. Looks like there was a whole spider colony living down here. It's not a whole lot to these. Basically, we've got a few resistors down here. These might be replacements because I don't know if they would have used dog bones back when they made this. We've got, I think there's a couple capacitors inside this box, and that's about it. The rest is really done with transformers. Oh, and then there's this, which is a big old rheostat. Crazy thing is the way that works is that's actually on the antenna input. So you control the volume not by varying the signal to the audio output tube. You control the volume by attenuating the antenna input to the first stage of amplification. I've heard these have a tendency to go bad, but we'll see. Alright, well, I'm going to spend a little bit of time cleaning this. I don't plan on restoring it right now. I just wanted to get a look at it and see you know, what kind of condition it was in. Here's a look at the schematic. Here's that volume rheostat right on the antenna, and that feeds 3 stages of type 26 amplifier tubes. Then there's a 27 detector, another 26 as the first audio amp, and then there's the 71A output tube. Output of this goes to this terminal block and then to a capacitor, and that output there, that goes to the speaker. So it's actually capacitively coupled to your high impedance speaker. And here's the other chassis, which is power supply. So there's a power transformer with the line voltage switch, type 80 rectifier. Here's the DC filter, most of which is done with chokes. There's only a couple 1 microfarad caps, so not a whole lot of capacitance on there. One thing that's a little curious on this radio is how they develop the negative bias for the grids. They do that by putting resistors in the filament circuits, which are also the cathodes. They show you a little simplified diagram here showing that. So these resistors here cause the cathode to be slightly positive in respect to the grid, or another way of thinking about it is the grid is negative with respect to the cathode. And here's a breakdown of what's inside that box on the tuner chassis. 3 caps and looks like a choke. Or no, that's probably not the box that's on the tuner chassis. That's probably one of the boxes on the power supply chassis. And these 3 caps are probably giant tar blocks, and I guess a choke inside there too. I spent a little bit of time cleaning up these chassis with a stiff brush and some compressed air, and it's starting to look a little more respectable. I also just tried spraying some of this electrical parts degreaser I picked up at a local home improvement center, and on the variable capacitor bearing here, and it did a really nice job. Cleans all that old crap right off. And I'll blot up that excess dripping down in there. I got the tuning cap cleaned up a bit, sprayed some WD-40 in it, and applied a little bit of white lithium grease, and it's turning all right now. And as for this, I think time has come to take a look inside. Whatever this material is, it's going right in the garbage. Oh, something I should have mentioned earlier is that it's a pretty good idea to wear some type of face mask while you're doing this, because who knows what type of nasties, ever know what's dust and dirt that's been coming off this chassis. It actually doesn't look too bad. Probably whatever this is protected it fairly well from the environment. This wiring doesn't look too bad. I'm just so amazed that this switch actually works quite well, as does the power switch. Well, works well in that the switch toggle will throw over, but I don't know about the electrical contacts inside, of course. Yeah, you can see it's been spliced on here, so this might actually not be the original. Oh, I see. Somebody spliced a new power cord at some point. I clipped off the nasty one that this came with. So let's see, one side goes to the switch, one side goes here, which goes around, probably up into the transformer somewhere. Oh wow, I just realized what I was looking at. These are power resistors. Wire wound power resistors. Here's a little bit more light shining on those resistors. So I got 1, 2, 3, and I presume this is also one. Assuming these wires aren't broken anywhere, it'll actually still be good. And one thing I'd really like to do before putting this back together and putting it on the side, because I have other projects I need to get back to, is I'd like to test the power transformer. To do that, I need to wire in a new power cord, and I think I'll just pull out the 80 rectifier, and of course use a variac and a dim bulb in series, and see what's what, because of course if the power transformer is bad, or the filter chokes are bad, that's going to be a problem.